What's up, guys? So starting off here, the next thing I want to do in the shop is get this guy working. So this is my Kobalt air compressor. It's a 60 gallon. It's a small motor, but it's got 2 cylinders in there. So I believe that's dual stage. They do have a newer version out of this guy, and it's one of the V's, and then a much bigger belt assembly and cage assembly in the back here. So you probably noticed, and have probably seen from my previous videos in my old garage, is I had built an aftercooler for this guy. So that's this guy down here, along with the air hose that needs to be mounted on the wall. So what I want to get going here is getting that guy mounted and installed, and some of the fabrication work that's going to have to go into it, because it's not going to be in the exact same spot as it was last time. So the charge pipe is going to be different. So let's get into that. This is pretty much where this is going to be, and then also got to do the electrical and all that to get it wired up. I'm not going to get into too much about the numbers on these things. It's 60 gallon, as I said before. It is oil lubricated, and it's got a 3.7 horsepower motor. You got your numbers there at 90 and 40 psi, and the max psi. Those are, you know, essentially what equipment can you use with this, because they all have a rating as far as like spraying paint or running an impact. So down here it's got a list in the green of what it can do, yellow what it can do intermittently. Just so you guys know my opinion of this thing, it's been great. It's a good looking compressor, not that that's important, but it was only 500 bucks from Lowe's, and then the Home Depot has the Husky. So I'm pretty sure they're both comparable. They both do what they're supposed to do, and the average problems that you have on these things are pretty much all similar. Like when I got it, there's a check valve in here that it allows air to go into the tank, but when it shuts off, it doesn't allow it to come back out, and a piece of seal, rubber seal in there, got in the way of the valve from closing, and this thing was just pissing air out. So I did upgrade the air filter. It's a little bit quieter. That's where most of your noise comes from. Over here you got your oil fill, and you see it's a little bit above. I did change the oil before we moved, so it's good to go. It seems to cycle a little bit. That'll come back down to the correct line. My opinion on these things is they're great. You know, if you're not running a professional shop, not to say that you couldn't use this at a professional shop, but at the home garage, and it doesn't take up too much space. It's just tall. I think it's about 400 to 450 pounds, so you definitely need a buddy to help lift it. You could bolt it to the floor, like I did. I strapped it to the wall, but this thing's gonna get moved eventually, so I'm not gonna drill it down to the concrete. So, all right, as compared to like Harbor Freight, I did order a Harbor Freight before I got this guy, and I returned it immediately. I did not like it. It wasn't oil lubed, it was Teflon, super loud. These things are a little more quiet, but it's all about what you're doing. If you have a good air filtration system to get the oil, water, and just clean air, if you're gonna paint, you can use these things. You just gotta have the system. So you gotta invest in it. But anyway, I highly recommend, if you guys just save up a little extra money to go, instead of going Harbor Freight, go with one of the Lowe's or Home Depot models, or find a used like Ingersoll Rand or something. Yeah, you'll be super happy with these, and obviously it comes with a warranty. So, all right, enough of that. Let's get into getting this thing running. All right, guys, I got everything unloaded. So I'm just gonna go through what it takes to build an aftercooler. What you're gonna need to get is since the air compressor is a 220 system, I got a 220 HVAC fan for it. That way it can run off the same power source, so when the motor kicks on, the fan will kick on at the same time. Attached to it is a B&M oil cooler, and it's rated up to 200 psi of pressure, and the air compressor only runs off 150, so it works great. I think if I measured, it was about maybe like 375, 400 degrees coming in, and with the fan running, it comes down to around 80 or 90, so it really, really cools that air down. This guy here is an auto drain. I'll get more into that here in a minute. This is the charge pipe that I had before I moved. It did replace one of these. This thing worked great when I had it coming off here to the cooler, but it couldn't handle the heat that was coming off, so it eventually started leaking, and the compressor was just running forever, but it was never getting to pressure. So I ended up making one of these. Just got it a round tube or a round pack of the copper piping, and then I bent it to how I wanted it. So we're gonna end up making one of those. And then here's my setup for my cleaning the air and drying it and whatnot. So, and this is the regulator here. So yeah, air dryer and then the air regulator. And just some shut off valves and whatnot, and reducer for the piping. I do plan on going bigger with the piping here soon, but for now I'm just gonna use these guys. This guy goes to the bottom of the tank, the air tank, and allows me to just reach down and open up the bottom of the tank to bleed any water off or empty the air out of it. It works really well. Otherwise you'd have to reach right underneath the center of it and spin. You guys have probably seen it. You gotta spin the little needle valve, and it brings the air out. And then just a setup for your air hose. So that's basically it. And then just a little bit of wiring, right? So the house 220 comes in here, and then this guy's, it's already wired inside here, but I'll show it to you. And this guy will just get wired back to the electronics here, or the wiring here, and wherever this guy ends up. So, all right, cool. Let's get into what this does. All right guys, so here's your Wilkerson auto drain. Part number is X01-04-M00. So it was kind of hard to find when I was looking for it, but this is it. So I just have a couple of AN fittings on top that I got off Summit Racing, and I'll try to post all this stuff on all the part numbers on my on the description section for this video. So, but to take it apart, it's super easy. You just got a little button there. You press it, and then you turn it, and then it drops down. And then the top just seals on with a little O-ring going around the whole perimeter of it, and it just pops off, so like that. A little gunky in there, just gotta clean it with some Scotch-Brite. So that's the top. And then the bottom, again, a little gunky, just gotta be cleaned up. It's got a screen in it that comes out, and then that's the housing for it, and then with the hole in the bottom, that's where the water comes out. This part here is the float system. So when it comes up, that's what opens a valve at the top here and shoots the water out the bottom. So that's how the system works. So it doesn't drain very often because I don't get that much water here, especially during the winter. But when it does drain, it just blasts it out the bottom. So I'm gonna get this put back together, and then let's get started to mounting this thing to the wall. All right guys, so this is the switch for the air compressor. So you get your hot wire feeds, they come in, one's here and then one's right here as well. And they just come in and you just shed down. These right here are the switch side. So the feeds here, when it switches over, it'll send power through here into these guys. One set of power goes to the motor up here, and then the other set of power comes out and goes to this guy right here. So that's how that works. I've run into a snag with the electrical. I gotta figure out how I'm going to wire this system to a 50 amp breaker. The wires are super thick, so I may have to do a sub panel or run a whole new wire. We'll see. My buddy's an electrician, so he's gonna help me out. If I ran a whole new wire, it would have to go up here, over inside the attic, and then down this guy here and plug in down there with a breaker. But I should be able to make that 50 amp work. Let's see here, what else? I figured where I'm gonna put the actual unit itself. Might be hard to do this with one hand. Let's see if we can't lift this guy up here. So yep, it's gonna end up going right here, like that. So that's where it's gonna go. And then this guy here will be able to connect into where it needs to connect into to attach. It's actually upside down right now, but yeah, so you get the picture. That's where she's going. I've got a list of items I gotta get, and we'll get this thing mounted. All right, so I decided to go with the sub panel here. It's gonna be a little bit easier to get this thing wired up, just gotta get it in. Not a big deal, already got the hole cut out. And I'm gonna end up running another 6-gauge wire from here up into the panel, and then running the associated circuits out of it. And then I got 3 breakers, 220 20 amp, 220 30 amp, and a 110 20 amp for a surprise down the road. So all the wiring, this guy will make it easier to hook up into here and then run around to its box, which is gonna be over here. So yeah, all right, let's get to wiring. All right, all the wiring's done. I haven't kicked it on yet. We'll test that here in a little bit. Just wanted to cover a couple things. So as you can see, there's a small gap underneath here. I'll fill that in. Just got a little crazy when I was cutting out the drywall. I tested everything with an ohm meter to make sure it was hooked up correctly, and it is good to go. And then the only thing I don't like about this is, you know, I wire tied it for now, but I'm gonna swing by and pick up some more conduit to wrap around these wires here just to protect them, but everything's nice and solid. I've got some insulators coming for the feet for the compressor. The auto drain's installed. The tube going from the auto drain to the tank. The tank's installed. So the next thing to do here is to plumb in the copper tubing from the head to the beginning of the aftercooler. So, and that's what this stuff is here. So it's 3/8 inch inner diameter, but it's 1/2 inch outer diameter, and it's type L, and you can use it on compressed air. So this is what I used before, as you just saw me hack it up. These are the old pipe here, and then these guys are 20 bucks a pop, or excuse me, 13 bucks a pop. So I didn't want to spend the money on that, so I went and found some replacement at Home Depot compression rings. So I'll get those on there, and we should be good to go. So let's get to it. Okay, so these are the 1-inch rubber insulators I'm going to add to the bottom of the feet on the air compressor. 3 of them. Just got a 1/2 inch lag bolt going through it, and then I'll zip them down with a washer, lock washer, and a nut to go on it. So I'll get those on. Those will help keep the compressor from vibrating so bad that it cracks and the mounts into the floor. So yeah, that it's a good thing to do. Definitely want to insulate your compressor, and then that'll actually lift the compressor up 1 inch, and then from there I can go ahead and start routing the air lines coming out of here. Insulating pads are installed. Tank's got it moves a little bit easier now. Not a big deal. It's going to be strapped to the wall when I'm done with it, and then we'll have the pipe coming off here, the air side coming up to about here, and then shooting across here to the regulator and filter. So that would be these guys here. So that'll help kind of secure to the wall. The biggest thing I just don't want this to tip over on like my daughter or anybody. So I'm definitely going to strap it to the wall. Should be bolted to the floor, but again, this thing is going to be moving in a couple of years down to the shed outside, so it's going to be temporarily here, and make sure that it's definitely not going to fall on anybody. So, all right, moving on. Before I finish up and run the air side, you know, as you saw, we just got this done. I want to finish with the charge pipe. So from here, it's going to flow down into here. So a couple of things. You don't want your charge pipe to come out and up and then come down. Reason being is the compressor compresses air, it gets really hot, and it collects moisture, and as it would cool down inside the charge pipe, you could have water funnel back inside the head, which can cause clearance issues inside the head, and you definitely don't want that. So what we're gonna do is you can come straight out or come out and start an angle. So since I gotta come out here and clear this, I'm gonna come straight out and then kind of just follow the curve here and then bring it around and run it into here. So that's the plan. Let's get to it. All right, so depending on what you're doing, I like to use the type L, 3/8 inner diameter roll. I get this from Home Depot. It can be used for compressed air. It's a softer copper, but the reason I like it is it's 3/8 inner diameter, and that gives me 1/2 inch outside diameter to use for the crush sleeve on the compression fitting for my AN fittings. So this is what I used last time. I haven't had any issues with it. Some people complain that over time, depending on your vibrations of the air compressor, can cause this pipe to crack. But you can mitigate that with using like 8L clamps that can handle the heat and just supporting the tube. So I haven't had any issues, but so far this has been good stuff. You want to have a cutter, tape measure, and then this is a tube bender. I'll try to see where I got this. I believe I ordered it off Amazon. I'll pull up my order history and post it. So, but that's what we're going to be using. So first things first, you got to figure out. You kind of eye this when you're doing it. It's just practice makes perfect. I got lucky the first time I did it and got it in one try. So hopefully I don't use up all 10 feet of this. So I really only need a small section of it, but yeah, there's some tricks you can do, like you can roll a section out, get it as straight as you can, put it in here, and then mark your degrees for each notch of degrees. So it goes from 0 to 90 all the way to 180, and you can make yourself a little cheater to help you figure out what the bend is. But if you just take your time, do a little bend here and there, you end up with what you need. So, all right, let's get to it. All right, guys, trying to get as many action shots with making this as I can. It's just hard to work with the camera and bend these pipes. So coming out of the head here, when you do this, make sure you put your fittings on because they take up space, right? You'll end up being too long with the whole pipe if you just take the measurement square off this guy. So I put these on both ends, right? And then I measured out 22 inches. I gave myself a bunch of extra pipe to work with. One thing you don't want to end up doing is having the foot of the pipe bender right here, because what it'll do is it'll flatten this and make it hard for you to get a good compression fitting on there. So you'll have to rework that. The thing with this metal is once you bend it, you don't want to bend it back the other way because it softens up. I think it's called annealing. I'll have to look into that, but anyway, don't quote me on that. So one thing I also did do is I made a cheater. So this guy coming out here, I put all my degrees on it, right? Obviously it's a 90-degree bend. And then I have the pipe coming down and it's zip tied to it right on top. So it's exactly where I want to have it. Got a nice gap here for airflow to keep this pipe from getting hot because these don't like to heat. I may end up making this bend over here a little bit more, just a little bit more of a gap because this pipe will get hot. So what I can do now is mark this guy and figure out exactly where I want to have the 90-degree bend to start. And if you look right here, I can have it start here on this guy, so I'll mark up there and then do the bend and it'll flow around and end up right where this guy is coming in, and that's where I need it to be. And then I can trim it to length and then the pipe's done. So, all right, let's get to it. All right guys, so just ran it. Everything's working. I wanted to show you this. So the air coming in, getting up there, it's hot. Now this is just the first cycle. The second cycle, this would be much, much higher. So as you can see, it's climbing up, right? About 120, and then coming out, we're down in the 70s. So works pretty well. Not expecting to get a whole lot of moisture right now. It's in the middle of winter. So let's go over a couple things. Okay, so big picture here. I want to start with the electrical. I am not an electrician. So, you know, you guys watched me put a sub panel in. I've done it before. My uncle's an electrician. My dad's done a ton of electrical. So you saw what I did. Biggest thing is you don't want to bond the sub panel like it would be bonded in the main. So if you're going to do that, please do your own research. Don't follow what I did because I can't guarantee that you're going to do it successfully. So again, not an electrician. And that's not what this was about. This was about installing the air compressor. So, all right, enough of that. All right, so electrical was done. Ran it into here. And then as you guys know, I tied in the aftercooler into the switch. So when the switch kicks on, the aftercooler kicks on. So it's all standalone. That kicks on, hot air comes out of the head here, pretty hot. I don't remember how high. I think I've seen like 250, 300 after it ran for a while on a hot summer day. But anyway, comes out here through this pipe, goes into the aftercooler, cools off, comes through here, water separates into here, and then it comes up. You get a little bit into the tank, but nothing like it. I mean, my air tools used to piss out water. They don't do that anymore. And then it gets in the tank and comes in pretty dry. And then coming out here, put a valve in here just in case everyone will shut this circuit off. So it comes up, mounts to the wall here. These are just hanging here. And then it goes through another air dryer that I can separate. You see no water's coming out of that, right? So, and then into the air hose itself. So again, remember this is just temporary. I'm thinking the air hose will end up over here actually, right behind where the air compressor is currently sitting. So I will post all the major parts that you need to get in order to make this. These run for, I've seen up to $1,000 for an aftercooler setup. So I think that was all in all 350 bucks, all said and done, and it worked out really well. Some upgrades I want to do later. I am going to put conduit around this. That needs to be done. I don't like the metal on here. That'll eventually rub through. So that'll be the next thing I do before I run this again. And then I do get a little air leakage up to the top here. So I want to put maybe some spray and foam that can handle some heat around and block these off right here so I get maximum airflow coming through there. The other nice thing about the guys that live up in the cold is this will heat your garage pretty quickly. Dumps out a bunch of heat. So, all right, that's it for this one. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thanks for tagging along. This will be one of many. I know everyone's waiting for me to get back on this. I can't work on it without my shop set up, so it's going to be a little bit. All right, thanks guys.